Since redesignating Houthi militants as terrorists. Let's listen in to what Brigadier General Pat Ryder has to say here.
I'm not going to get into percentages or talking other than to say, we employed over 150 munitions, targeted over 16 locations, and had impact. Thank you. Fadi.
Thank you, General. I have two questions. We've been reporting about a new attack today in the Gulf of Aden from Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen that targeted a U.S. merchant vessel. What can you tell us about the situation and any information you can offer on the situation?
Yeah. Thanks, Fadi. I am tracking reports coming out of the region. We're working with Central Command now to get more information on that, and so certainly we'll, as we have been, put that information out as quickly as we can.
Can you confirm the attack happened?
I'm tracking reports of an attack coming out of the region.
As you mentioned, the strikes against Houthis in Yemen are trying to disrupt their ability to continue these attacks. However, since the first wave of those strikes in Yemen, two more, for the first time, 2 U.S. ships have been targeted. Would you say the security situation in the Red Sea area is better or worse after those U.S. strikes?
What I can tell you is that we've degraded Houthi capability to conduct strikes. As I highlighted, and as we highlighted shortly after those strikes, we would not be surprised if we saw efforts on their part to continue to try to conduct retaliatory strikes. Ultimately, at the end of the day, let's take a step back and look at how we got here. Mid-November, we started seeing these attacks, despite multiple warnings and multiple efforts. The Houthis have continued, and so there was an international coalition, including the countries that I highlighted at the top, that have taken action to prevent these strikes or deter these kinds of attacks in the future. Ultimately, at the end of the day, again, the Houthis need to ask themselves how much of their capability do they want degraded and disrupted in light of these illegal, reckless, and dangerous attacks. The United States, this is not about the United States. This is about the ability of the nations of the world to sail an international waterway through the Red Sea, through which 10 to 15% of economic trade transits, and do so safely and securely. That's what we're focused on, and we'll continue to work closely with the international community to deter these attacks. It's an international problem that requires an international response. Chris.
Thanks, Pat. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed al-Sudani told the Wall Street Journal that the U.S.-led military coalition that is in Iraq to fight ISIS was no longer needed. He said, quote, "We believe the justifications for the international coalition have ended." Sudani didn't set a deadline for the departure of the coalition, nor did he close the door, but he said he was no longer worried that the departure of the coalition would undermine Iraqi military capabilities. So what is the U.S. response?
I'm not going to comment on the Iraqi, government's remarks other than to say U.S. forces are in Iraq at the invitation of the government of Iraq. We value Iraq as a partner. We'll continue to consult closely with them. At this time, I'm not aware of any official request by the government of Iraq for DoD forces to depart. I'll just leave it at that.
Have there been requests for any official talks to talk about
as I highlighted at the
As President Joe Biden rarely appears in public because he is actively working. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said, according to her, the US leader holds many closed meetings, RIA Novosti reports. "I would not say that the president is not seen much. He was in several states in 3 days. It is important to note this. The president is active, doing what the Americans need," said Jean-Pierre. In addition, the press secretary noted that the head of state recently attended a funeral, and soon he will have a business trip. Thus, Jean-Pierre answered the question of why Biden has appeared in public only twice over the past 3 weeks, and these appearances taken together took about an hour. Earlier, foreign media calculated how many days Biden rested in 2023. It turned out that as President Joe Biden spent more than a third of the year in vacation spots. In total, the leader of the United States did not work for 138 days 37 of the entire year, and most often spent time at his residence in Delaware and Lake Tahoe in Nevada. In general, Biden rested much more often than his predecessor, former President Donald Trump, who spent an average of only 26% of his time outside the White House each year. A Pentagon spokesman denied information that appeared in several media outlets about a possible attack on the ship and the U.S. embassy in Iraq, RIA Novosti reports. It was reported that in this way the Houthis responded to as military strikes on targets of the Ansar Allah movement in Yemen. These statements are false. There have been no reported attacks on the U.S. embassy at this time. We also have no information about any attacks on an American warship, said a representative of the U.S. Department of Defense. Earlier, the Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs called for restraint and to prevent a possible increase in tensions in connection with airstrikes carried out by the U.S. and UK against targets of the Shiite Ansar Allah movement Houthis in Yemen. It is noted that Saudi Arabia is seriously concerned. Earlier, Biden confirmed the fact of attacks by the U.S. military and its allies on targets of the Ansar Allah movement Houthis in Yemen. According to the U.S. leader, the attack was a response to a threat to freedom of international navigation and the safety of military personnel. As a result of 27 Houthi attacks, commercial ships from more than 50 countries were damaged, so according to the head of the United States, the international community's response to these reckless attacks was united and decisive.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has promised to carry out large-scale deportations of illegal migrants if he wins the elections scheduled for November. Before this, he announced plans to end the Ukrainian conflict in 24 hours, and recommended that Kyiv come to terms with the loss of part of its territory. What else did the ex-president manage to promise voters, and why the leaders of Western Europe are especially afraid of his victory? In the news.ru material, Trump blames Biden for migrant surge. Donald Trump held a meeting with his supporters in Iowa on January 10th. At the rally, which was broadcast by Fox News, the ex-president announced the largest deportation if he wins the election. There are millions of illegal migrants in the country, the 45th president of the United States noted. Have you seen what is happening in New York, where ordinary students were kicked out and migrants were brought in their place? We are facing the largest deportation in the history of our country. We'll put everyone back where they came from, Trump said. According to Trump, the administration of President Joe Biden is to blame for the influx of refugees at the southern border of the United States. At the same time, the intention to expel foreigners is not the only loud promise the billionaire made during the election campaign.
Appeals court judges signaled Tuesday that they will likely reject Donald Trump's claims that he is immune from prosecution in his election interference case. The outcome seemed clear during argument. Sharp touched on a range of political and legal considerations. The Republican presidential primary. The judges did not say when they might rule, but the timing of their decision is crucial, with a March 4th trial date looming. Trump's lawyers, who are hoping to delay the case beyond the November presidential election, are certain to go to the U.S. Supreme Court if the D.C. court sides with special CO. A look at some of the key moments from Tuesday's arguments. Ray PPS, a former Arizona resident who was driven into hiding by death threats, pleaded guilty in September to a misdemeanor charge. He received no jail time and there were no restrictions placed on his travel during his probation, but he will have to serve 100 hours of community service. He appeared remotely by video conference and wasn't in the Washington, D.C. courtroom when Chief Judge James Boasberg sentenced him. Prosecutors had recommended a 6-month term of imprisonment for EPPS. Donald Trump was acting within his role as president when he pressed claims about alleged fraud and irregularity in the 2020 election. His lawyers told a federal appeals court in arguing that he is immune from prosecution.